Before you watch The Eternals, I wanted to talk about some history regarding them and why this movie might be so important to the continuation of the MCU. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like and subscribe for future Marvel content. So, in the comics, millions of years ago, the Celestials came to Earth and took some of the apes they found there and transformed some into the Eternals and some into deviants. The Celestials are a group of extremely powerful cosmic beings who have basically acted as gods in the shadows of world events in Marvel Comics. Their little quote-unquote experiments that they did on Earth, such as the creation of the Eternals and the Deviants, also included the creation of the X gene, which is the gene that makes a mutant a mutant. The Eternals in the comics rarely decided to interfere with any wars or conflicts that happened on Earth, only really if the Deviants got involved. Most of their lifestyle was dedicated to peace. To normal humans, they can be seen as almost godlike figures, such as the Greek gods, Norse, Roman, whatever. However, it is very worth noting that they are not those gods, because some of those traditional gods are characters in Marvel Comics, as obviously most people are familiar with Thor, and Greek gods also exist in Marvel Comics, and the Eternals have actually interacted with them before in the past. The Eternals were supposed to protect the Earth from the likes of the Deviants, but there have been many times in the history of Marvel Comics where they failed to do so. Examples of this could be when the Deviants had at one point conquered the Earth, and by the time the Eternals tried to do anything about it, they were outnumbered severely, and they actually had to go ask for help from the Celestials. When the Celestials came, they wiped out almost all of the Deviants and the humans in the process, doing things like sinking the kingdom of Atlantis to the bottom of the ocean. The Eternals have kind of a generic set of abilities, such as, normal human attributes, but enhanced strength, speed, endurance, etc. Sometimes they can fly. In the comics, there are certain Eternals who prefer to use specific particular powers over others. Now, they are also able to form their collective power and intelligence into a single powerful entity known as the Unimind. Now, based off of this information alone, it's apparent that the MCU version of the Eternals will differ a decent amount from its comic book counterpart. For starters, I believe, in an interview with Kevin Feige, he stated that the timeline that would be explored in the Eternals movie would be quote-unquote thousands of years in the MCU's past. Now, if we are to believe that this movie will show the creation of the Eternals, then that difference from being created a million years ago in the comics as opposed to thousands of years in the movie, that's obviously a pretty big distinction, right? We can also see from various trailers that it looks like they might not have all of the same generic abilities, and rather they all already specialize in a specific, unique power. What is also interesting to note from trailers is that they said that they couldn't interfere with the fight against Thanos because they were only instructed to interfere in conflicts that only involve deviants. Well, in the comics, Thanos is actually an Eternal born with a deviant gene. So, I personally feel like he could have been close enough for them to interfere with the fight, but we all know that the reason that they have that there is simply because they hadn't had made the movie yet, and thus they needed an excuse as to why the Eternals weren't in Infinity War and Endgame. The last thing I want to briefly touch on with this movie is that, like I said earlier, the Celestials were responsible for the creation of the X gene and thus the creation of mutants. So therefore, it is likely that in some form or fashion, this movie can set up the existence for mutants in the MCU going forward, which is what everyone has been patiently waiting for ever since that Fox-Disney deal and Disney acquired the rights to the X-Men. Maybe they'll say mutants always existed in the MCU, or maybe they'll say the cosmic energy released from the snap of the Infinity Gauntlet caused the mutation. Either way, mutants are getting very close to finally being in the forefront of the MCU, so it's really exciting. But if you enjoyed this video, feel free to like and subscribe and leave a comment with what your expectations for the Eternals might be, or if you're watching this after you've seen the movie, how comic book accurate it was in a general sense, or, if they mentioned the X gene. Thanks for watching.